Tonight, we are going to talk about hot news. And this is episode 219, or as we're going to call it, the Rowdy to Lee's episode, because that was his average. It's time for Dingers.
This is Dingers, way more than fantasy baseball. We keep it real when we talk and knock it straight out the park. Let's see the stats, what's the average draft position? What kind of plays you making? Check the wins above replacement, check the lineups and the points. This I gotta see, what's your path to victory? Are they aiming for a dynasty? Get points going head to head, please don't do me no favors. We're always watching waivers, ain't no minor league, this is major, yeah. Dingers, let's go.
Welcome to Dingers, the only fantasy baseball podcast for smart people. It's not just Heimer Candelario that wins you championships. That's why week in and week out, we're delivering tips and strategies to help you live that straight up OG lifestyle. Tyler Childs joined, as always, by Robert Baseball III from the Murder Room, and special guest this evening, Rotisserie Ronald, has made an appearance with us again to talk some hot news, as Rob said in his deep truck stop smoker voice. He is with us.
I just put on Twitter under the announcement when it comes on that says, at Dingers Pod is where you can find us. But I put underneath where it said the episode. I said, my voice is so rough, your mom wants to ride it.
Jeez.
Oh,
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah,
welcome, Ronnie.
thank you. I mean, it's only like 19 episodes late. I've been trying to get on since 200 again, so better.
Or 881 too early. Depends on how you look at it.
There you go.
I'll be back for that episode.
Episode 1100.
Once we switch from talking averages to talking OPS, then we'll have
Yeah,
you
there
back
you
on.
Yeah.
There'll be a gap in between. But yeah,
that's funny.
so I still sound sick. I mean, I did on the last one. A couple people mentioned I didn't mute myself enough with coughing. I apologize. Back off, guys. All right. The number of times I did mute myself, and then Ty was like, "You're on mute." I don't know what was worse. Probably the information I was sharing. But anyway, tonight it's all about the hot news, and I'm excited. Ty, how's life for you? I know you were talking tournament stuff the other day.
Yeah, it's tournament season, so it's always fun. Did the old code review into the late hours of the evening this week, so just fun stuff. But it comes with the territory, so all good. But ready to talk hot stove, because obviously this is where we do work. This is when we get paid absolutely nothing to help everyone that listens, and that's why we brought Ronnie here, because he brings up our average earnings by exactly nothing. So I think in honor of that, we do what people do that make $0. And
a long time ago, someone decided to put stuff in glass bottles. In some of these bottles, they put juice or milk, and that was stupid. Today, only alcohol and a few other products remain in the containers from the gods. It's time for beers and bourbon, because good advice only comes in a bottle.
that's the best I could do with the cup.
That's all right. There's lots of noises.
I don't know if you can, obviously you can't see that on my camera, but
Yeah,
heard
the podcast listeners can't see it, but tell us, what is it? Let me guess. Steam whistle.
I was gonna go steam whistle, but I diversified.
Hey, right on.
The lug
What
tread.
is it?
The Bose lug tread.
Oh,
which-
okay.
I thought
Is
for
also
sure he
a
was going to
Canadian
roll
beer.
with it. I thought he was going to for sure come in with a crown float, just to be.
Maybe
That would have been
later.
great. That would have been so funny.
I'll have to save that till I have a camera again.
Yeah.
So, Robbie, how about you? I know you've obviously been fighting the flu, and I figured we would continue that conversation of how are you over a drink. So,
Yeah, I still I haven't drank in a while, but I'm ground floating tonight because I have to work. Well, here's the best part. I have to work a breakfast function tomorrow for 83 people, something like that. So I'm going to go into work, do that, not breathe on the food, obviously. And then head off to my niece's birthday party. So that'll be fun, exciting. She's going to be 3. So we're all very excited. But yeah, I'm hoarse, just like the guys we're going to talk about tonight. Some of them are fantasy horses. What would you call somebody who's terrible for fantasy purposes? And I don't just mean, well, I guess we could call them all Alex Reyes, but we'll get to him eventually. Yeah, I don't know.
Are we sticking with the farm animal theme here?
Sure, why not? I mean, you got a horse that's going to ride you to the championship, so and
So
a goat,
barn cats then?
Barn cats, sure. Well, I don't know. They serve a purpose.
Do they?
Yeah, they're your utility RP type guy. They definitely serve a purpose. They get rid of the mice.
So barn cats.
Barn cat.
Feel
Barn
like
cat would be like my fantasy team name should be Barn Cats.
100%. Your entire team is made up of barn cats.
What's something you just like find? I guess barn cats. Yeah, you just randomly find
They're everywhere.
useless.
And
barn
sometimes
cats.
they just have multiplied.
Yeah.
They're just
Without you
fighting to
knowing.
keep their career alive, right? Like, I mean, that's what barn cats do. So
I think we're onto
I feel
something.
I think it's here.
Yeah, the brand. That's the T-shirt.
Yeah. So let's talk about barn cats. And I mean, there's no more obvious place to start than the Colorado Rockies, who are
More
made
like a
up.
barn fire, but yeah.
Yeah, Austin Gomber, farm cat. Nolan Jones, now a farm cat, traded from the Cleveland Guardians to the Colorado Rockies in exchange for, what's his first name?
I think it's Juan Brito,
Juan
Yeah.
Brito.
like a
Juan.
legit J2 guy.
Juan, don't call me Burrito.
Don't do that. Not all night. Are you gonna just nickname them all?
Why not?
This is gonna be like papayas all over again. Oh, poor Andy. Anyway, so yeah, Ronnie, what do you think on this one? Nolan Jones supposed to be a power hitter, got some time finally last year with the Guardians. It was not great, and then shipped off to Colorado, which I mean, fantasy owners love every player of theirs that's not a pitcher going to Colorado.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
exactly. If he can carve out some playing time, there's never a useless player in Colorado who's a starter, or even starting like 5 days a week. If you're in deep league, 30 teams or more, I always got room for Rockies on my team.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think one of the big things is throughout kind of his minor league career, like there was a prominence for on base percentage, right? 400 through the lower minors, dripped down to about 370 in the upper tiers, but it's still there. Right? He'll come back around. We saw blips of it last season at AAA and at the pro level, although briefly at the pro level. This is a good trade for Nolan Jones.
His AAA, I'm just looking at his player card here. His AAA games are actually, I believe, in Colorado. If that's what the COL stands for here, what I'm looking at.
I think it's Columbus.
Oh, Columbus? Never mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely
I got too
Columbus.
excited. I was wondering why they would have a AAA.
I mean, there's a lot of elevation change in Columbus.
No, not really. I got too excited when I see that COL.
Well, I think that's an advantage, though. Like if you're saying you like the stat line, though, Ronnie, because if anything, it's supposed to be better, right? So it in a higher altitude, it's supposed to be a little easier. But I will say this for everybody who is excited about Nolan Jones, he certainly is not shoe in to start the year with Colorado. And at the same time, when he does carve out time, on the opposite side of guys on their 26-man who could be in trouble, depending on what else they do this offseason, a Connor Joe, who started to lose at bats the last third of 2022, is certainly a guy who could be hampered by an acquisition like Jones, because you give the prospect pedigree there, even though Connor Joe could just end up moving to another team and being a useful bench bat. I think the days of Connor Joe starting could be closing if they haven't already. Of course, health dependent, because that's what kept him in the lineup last year. He just stopped getting time once Colorado started to promote some of their younger guys.
Well,
And
I think the reality is, I don't know that you give up a Juan Brito if you're not intending on starting him, right? Like Brito's numbers,
good point.
like last season, 11 bombs out of the shortstop position, 877 OPS at A-ball. Like still a ways to go before we're going to see it, but 11 bombs out of a shortstop at A-ball is prominent and enough to take note, right? So I think they have every intention of it. McMahon is a guy that's not necessarily a solidified third baseman, even though he's a good defensive third baseman, right? So you could see those guys interchange. Plus, you got the DH. So I think Nolan Jones, as long as he shows up, is going to break the squad out of camp.
Okay.
That's where I see it.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, that's a great spot for him, and Brito going to the Guardians is also very interesting because all they do now is collect shortstops, and pitchers who are like, huh, who? And then we turn around and see fantasy assets that come of it. Brito's further away, of course, but still, like they've got 6 legitimate potential shortstops in the like rookie eligible, I guess I'll say, and under, because some of them played last year. So the Guardians might have more moves ahead for them. But I mean, you secure Jose Ramirez, you no longer have a need for Nolan Jones if you don't think you can move him around.
Yeah, they definitely have no shortage of middle infielders, to the point where Arias was playing first base in the playoffs, right? That's a decent shortstop defensively, and he's playing first base. So that's really what you need to know on that front.
Yep. All right, that's the end of that one. So the next one is if only we still had that train horn. Tommy John train is in town for our boy Bryce Harper. My comment on this one is, how could this not be a good buy low time for everybody who's in an auction league? Otherwise, no one's honestly going to care. But if there's a clock that's ticking, this is the time where somebody in the offseason, you have a hard cap in your league or penalties or whatever, Bryce Harper is going to be expensive. Maybe you want to try to swoop in now and get Harper, but like he'll be back mid-season at the latest.
The only thing here that worried me a little bit, and it depends on your league, and it came up in one of my leagues, not with you guys, but position eligibility. And if you're in a league where he's gonna just be playing DH and he loses right field or outfield status, that would be
for
something that would worry me.
2024, so it would be for
Yeah.
the following season.
Yeah, if he loses,
No, he'll be back before that.
that status, that would be
Yeah, and that would only happen. That would only happen for the first week or 10 days, based on your league's setup. It would only affect you the following couple of weeks before he gains it back. But also Philly, like, isn't Schwarber their DH?
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do about that.
So it's definitely going to create a situation.
Left field.
He was playing left field. He was playing left field last year.
Did he move? Okay.
Yeah, he was playing left field.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have a significant problem that way. I mean, between the guys that they have, he can move them around. Heck, put Schwarber at second base. Play the Moustakas play. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Vierling can play all over the field, right? So
and move Riamuto out to second. Like, I mean,
I'm sorry. What was that one time? What was that idea you just had?
Schwarber was drafted as catcher. Fun fact. Right?
Yeah, I remember that by the Cubs.
Yep. So,
well, speaking of bad ideas, Ty, speaking of bad ideas, Tyler Anderson, 3-year deal with the Los Angeles Angels. I feel like last year was just like a high point, a peak, as some people may say. He turned into a 3-year deal. I'm not interested for dynasty purposes. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
I've never been a Tyler Anderson guy. I will never be a Tyler Anderson guy. I'm even less of a Tyler Anderson guy now that he's an Angel, right? Like this is just, it's becoming Colorado, right? It's where pitchers go to die. It's just become a cesspool of productivity from a fantasy pitching perspective. So I'm 100% out until someone not named Shohei Ohtani proves me wrong.
It's the 6-man rotation. Ronnie?
Yeah, I am not a fan of that 6-man rotation. It screws up. You guys are like training for 15, 20 years of your life. Well, this might be a little stretch, but like your whole semi-pro career in the 5 days, and then you get thrown in the 6, and we all know baseball is all about routine. And then these guys get traded, and now they have to pitch every 6 instead of every 5. And I think some it helps them, but for most it might throw them off.
Yeah, it just becomes once a week, right? That's what it works out to with the days off. They're essentially like you get your day, like a college pitcher, your Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. In the world of the Angels, you're Monday through Sunday's guy, right? Like you'll just end up being on that guy, which would suck if you're an early week guy, I bet.
Yeah.
One thing that go ahead, Ernie.
I was just gonna say, for weekly leagues, you're only ever going to get really one start a week from him, so that negates some of his value in a head-to-head weekly league.
Yeah, agreed. The one thing I think is interesting that we might see more of this year, as their younger guys get a little bit more inning count, is that you might see more bullpen days. So you might see them pitch on their 3rd off day or their 4th off day as a bullpen day, and save the bullpen, right? So could be a really interesting strategy that they might roll out this year. I would love to see it. I think it's a good one. Like if you can roll your your best pitchers out every third day for an inning and a half or an inning, depending on their pitch count, why not?
Yeah.
It's a good move. But just as long as the guys can come out of the pen and do that, that's the question.
I thought it was going to be a good thing for the Angels because they'd be able to essentially go really hard with their high K, like situational pitchers, because they had six starters. You can ask more of each starter, but at the same time, when you make a move, you could have more specialized guys. But that's like the opposite of what's happened. And when a starter blows up with the Angels, which seems to be, well, last year, at least twice a week, they're pooched. I remember watching a game really early last year, and I forget what the hell it was that happened, who they were playing, but I was watching basically the decline so early in the year. I'm like, they're toast right now. Like
they started out pretty good, right? And then
yes,
they
and
just
faded
when
bad.
the Blue Jays came around, I think they might have swept them, and that was the beginning of the end for Joe Madden.
Poor guy.
Well,
Poor
but here's a thought though. Like if you have 6 guys with that throw one extra inning between every start, like you're about 160, 170 innings. If you get more than one inning out of those guys, like you could have an extra starter worth of innings, which is a really interesting strategy. And I'm kind of angry at myself for not catching on that that's a possibility. But like that would be a phenomenal strategy if they set up this whole 6-man to do that. That would be dominant because you roll them out as the opener. That way they get a starter's routine. They don't have to worry about the middle inning. And then the guys roll in right after. Like it would be a really interesting move.
The bullpen day, right? The bullpen day becomes 20 pitches in game.
Because they're throwing full out on those bullpen days. So why not give the team some value? And then, maybe you save a reliever in the pen and you have more bats off the bench.
Unrelated to kind of related to fantasy. I'm curious what that team will do if Ohtani goes down for, a month. Like, would they go back to a 5-man? And then how's that, work into...
That's very interesting. They did go back when he was on his Tommy John year. They were 5-man. So
he was going to be out for the year, not just like a couple week period.
Yeah, that's true. It would be up to the manager at that point in time. I'm sure they wouldn't try to force that 6th unless they feel like it's a legit strategy.
Right.
Doing it, because I know some teams talked about it, but anyway, that was too much time for Tyler Anderson and the Angels. Colorado re-signed an RP. Do we care? Well, maybe Tyler Kinley, deep league guy, deep points league specifically, because you can get points for Ks and things like that. Save hold league, possibly a guy. Potential closer option if Bard goes down, if something bad happens. But I mean, this isn't like super exciting. Like a lot of the names we're going to discuss, but it's something to note. He's back, and obviously Colorado likes him.
Yeah,
Colorado
that's about all.
Won't be on my
that's about all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Eliza Hernandez to the Mets lets us all calm down. He sucks, and he's not ideally going to be in their opening day rotation.
I actually somewhat potentially disagree. I actually think this could be one of the sneakier offseason plays. Like there's an arm here. It just, I don't know if it didn't get the right attention, the right coaching, or if there was an attitude thing underneath it. We won't know until we see it, but there's some upside to this arm, and it could be a really sneaky acquisition in deeper leagues that could end up with, some nice upside into a rotation, because who knows what the Mets rotation is going to be. They don't have enough depth if they lose the arms that the 2 arms that they could potentially lose, right? So this
Bassett's also a free agent too.
You're right, yeah, right? 3 guys. He's got Cookie Bassett and DeGrom. We got to assume DeGrom's coming back. Like that doesn't feel right if he's not a Met. But I do think Hernandez could potentially get a shot, or at least have the short track to win a spot.
Yeah, I think he could have a shot. I'm just saying, don't count on him as someone the Mets are going to be like, that's our SP 4-5. I think he's a 6-7, and then he's got to do the same thing he did in Miami initially, which was come in the season and then do something useful, which he wasn't too big on. Ronnie, you an Eliza Hernandez guy or nah?
If I'm just building, if I have a really deep bench and I'm building out the 40-man, if the price is right, I can get him. I'll throw him on there. I'm not going out of my way to acquire him. I feel like guys in this category, there's dozen you could pick between that would get you the same outcome at the end of the day. 6-7 starter that might luck into getting a full-time rotation spot. I wouldn't press it myself, but if it landed in my lap, I wouldn't I wouldn't mind it.
Okay. How about Oscar Mercado? He was good for that brief period of time with Cleveland, and then has been disappointing fantasy owner since. He's now with the Cardinals, who I believe is the team that initially drafted him. I personally don't care. Ronnie, do you care? And then Ty.
I did not know he got traded to the Cardinals. So there was a period of time that
I
was
think it
trying
was
to.
like a released or something. Like he signed like a minor league deal. So I
Yeah,
think
I
he was
just
just
seen
let
how he
go.
signed a minor league deal. I was trying to get him back in like 2019 or 2020, 2019 after that
Mhm.
season he had, but he's just never really done anything. I don't know. This one, I'd like to see what Ty says. This one, I don't know if I'm just holding on hope, a little Nomar Maraza here, or if I should just cut.
No, this is never ever Nomar Mazara. Like Oscar Mercado is a depth piece. I think Dixon Machado signed with LA this week. I think that's a comparable here, like a guy that has
Oh, okay. I didn't
great
even put him on the
upside.
list. I didn't even think
Yeah.
he was worthy. Well, okay, cool.
Well,
I'm
he
glad you
came
brought
back.
him up.
He came back from where Japan or wherever he was playing before. But I think this is a very similar comparable. There's just not a lot other than organizational depth, right? So this is a guy. If you're desperate for a bats, you want to scratch a run or two across. Like this is really all you're getting. So especially St. Louis, like I think that's probably the worst position for him to have landed to hope for major league at bats. Like that outfield is crowded. I just don't see
Right.
how Oscar Mercado cracks through that.
It was 2019, Ronnie, that he had his breakout year,
Yep.
269 average with a solid stat line across the board. He was hot garbage since then. And then Ty, last year, Dixon Machado played with the Cubs and the Giants on their farm system and was a very good player. 291, average 372 OBP, but stolen bases were 10 and power is non-existent at 6.
Yep.
So I would say they are very similar.
Agreed.
Both disappointing and not worth talking about again. But Anthony Rizzo's back with the Yankees. Are we just going to see the slow decline and then everybody just forgets about Anthony Rizzo, but he ends up on a bunch of championship rosters in fantasy? That's what's going to happen, right? We agree?
I mean, Rizzo is a category guy. Like I think like if you're drafting Rizzo, you're drafting him for categories, and that's it. I mean, he's not going to be the centerpiece of your team, and I don't think he's being drafted that way anymore, right? So I think he fits the mold he probably should have always fit because he really only had 2 monster seasons, right? Outside of that, he's just been a good player, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? So
Yep.
I think he still fits that mold, if you ask me. I mean, I love the Yankee re-sign, though. That's about as good as it gets for him.
Yeah, the average is going to kind of kill you, but he's going to put up the home runs in that park, and he's going to put up decent RBIs and runs for first base.
I do think
don't
we'll see a
hate it.
tick up in averages here. Like I think 250 is potential there for him
He was
in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, it's 248 last year, 224 dropped down. Yeah, I want to kind of look back, see how he ended the year, if he was trending in the right direction or not. But his OPS was above 800.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
that's very
speaking of-
staple for Rizzo.
Yeah. But I mean, his career average 265, right? So like I think a tick up from what we saw last year. Like I talk about this all the time, guys, like switching leagues. Like last year was his first real full season in the AL, right? He came across, had moderate success down the stretch for the Yankees in 21, but full season adjustments, all good. But he had a bunch of injuries last year too. So like I don't think 224 is what we should expect out of Rizzo. 250, 820, 830 OBP or OPS, sorry. Is what we're looking for, I think.
And the Yankees also had a very interesting lineup as the year went on. Like they just eventually were like, Rizzo's our leadoff hitter. And, they did that unique thing. We'll see what happens this year when they fail to sign Judge and end up with Brandon Nimmo.
They're going back to the balanced schedule now, so he's going to see a lot of pitchers he's familiar with now. So that could bump him back up to his average.
I agree. I think that's an expectation.
That'll be an interesting one for the overall. I compare Rizzo, Ty, to kind of how you do Molina. I think he's going to age in that same vein of being useful, but he's so commonplace and no longer a top, 3 to 5 type guy that he's going to be forgotten, which is why I said he'll end up on championship teams because he's still helping. Somebody who won't end up on any of your championship teams is newly acquired Red Sox Hoy Park. One-time high average guy. I think it was 2021. It must have been that he had a really good average and AAA season with the Yankees. He was either DFA'd or traded at the deadline. He may have been the Clay Holmes trade. That would be interesting if he was traded to the Pirates. And then he got to play a little bit of Major League Baseball, but he's never been able to put it together. And the Pirates designated you, and that is a bad sign. And then the Red Sox acquire you. And I don't know how I feel about that, but he's there and he'll start to get some notes. And if you're in Red Sox Nation area, you're going to start to hear a lot about all those players. And because he's got MLB time, his name will come up as part of that depth chart. Ronnie, I'm interested to know in a player like Jock Peterson, A, if you are, a guy who likes to roster him, and B, if you care about this taking the qualifying offer, or he just re-signed with San Fran. Either way,
Oh,
he's
I'm
back
sorry.
with
I
the
thought you were
Giants.
talking about Park, and I was going to
Yeah.
say, who the is
No,
Park?
I
'Cause
moved on
had
to
not heard
Jock.
of him.
So real quick, he was in the Clay Holmes trade, and
Okay,
all I can
thank you.
think of right now in my head is like the song "War," but hoy, Park, what is he good for? Absolutely nothing.
Hey, come on now. That's pretty good. Yeah, no, that's pretty good.
Jock
Okay, but I
Peterson,
moved
though?
on before you guys, so apologize.
Yeah, you did. You just skipped right on through Hope Park. That's the championship bringer right there.
Because he didn't want us to dump on him. That's why.
I know. Yeah, Jock Peterson. I owned some shares of Jock Peterson last year. I got him really late in a lot of leagues or for dirt cheap, and sort of like Rizzo, he's just a category guy for me. And like I think the Giants are going to be forced to pay him. They're paying him almost $20 million a year. They're not going to put him on the bench, so he's
Right.
going to get playing time. But
Well, and that outfield has zero talent. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's he's can play all three positions.
I'm curious if
They just-
if the Giants sneak their way and get Judge and Jock Peterson's in that lineup in and around Judge, putting up his
And he-
stats as well.
And highly touted prospect Heliot Ramos. Come on, everybody. Come
Yep.
on. Okay, well, the next one,
Hey.
this next one, I'd like you both to just tread lightly, knowing my feelings could be hurt by either player. Kyle Lewis, former 2020 Rookie of the Year, is now a Diamondback, and future All-Star Cooper Hummel is now a Mariner. And the interesting fact of this is obviously Kyle Lewis goes to Arizona. He's starting. If he's healthy, ideally he'll be in a corner, so he's not into all the plays. And some DH time would be good too. But Cooper Hummel going to the Mariners is interesting because he was in the fall league and he was catching. And that's fun because that means that he's just going to be a baseball player. And we know how Dipoto likes to move the guys around. Anybody remember Austin Nola? We could see Cooper Hummel production peak by midseason. And depending on what's going on and how, oh my gosh, who's the young catcher who did very well for the Mariners down the stretch?
I
You're
have
the,
it. Cal
you're
Rowley.
the Dipoto guy.
Kyle Rowley. Yeah, baby. He could have that combo going, and Cooper could also just be doing, backup practice, whatever. There's options here. The thing with Cooper Hummel is that he doesn't have MLB catching time, and last year when he came up, he was getting such inconsistent time with a terrible Diamondback team, and because I went on to the Diamondback side of things and dug in a bit, the fans and analysts and things were frustrated that they weren't playing more of the younger guys amongst that crew. They were saying they're not getting consistent at bats. No wonder, they're continuing to struggle. So I would hope that the Mariners will find a way. But obviously Kyle Lewis, this is the guy in the trade. We need to see Kyle Lewis be just a major leaguer. We said on a previous pod, give the guy 400 at bats and figure it out. He's going to get that opportunity now. So Ty, I'm sure you're all in. Tell everybody.
I don't know. For me, I'm actually concerned, right? The reality is, on paper, this is a very obvious win for the Diamondbacks in this trade, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that Dipoto was willing to make this trade for the return, you can't tell me there wasn't a better trade than Kyle Lewis. I'm sorry, or for Kyle Lewis.
Cooper, I feel like it's 5 years of Cooper.
How does Toronto
and 2
not
years
get
of
him
Lewis.
in the deal?
Oh, save that one. We'll
save
that
that
one.
one. We'll save.
But I like that idea, Ronnie. Remember that.
All right.
So, I mean, the reality is though, there has to be a better fit I mean, the problem for the Mariners is no one wants to trade their middle infielder. Like Cleveland would have been a really interesting fit here for Kyle Lewis. Like, you got to imagine there was a better trade there. And so, yeah, they're in the AL, and yeah, they were a playoff team last year, but so was Toronto, and they just made a trade to Ronnie's point. Like, I don't understand this trade. So for me, for that reason, like, there's a red flag here. Like, Seattle knows something, or they just think Kyle Lewis is a great guy and they want him to go play in Arizona for some reason.
It certainly, there, like, this has the to be continued that some of the other trades that we're going to discuss and things honestly don't. You know, it's very much you know what you're getting on both sides. Something's going to happen with this one. Like, hopefully it's not a dud on both ends. But I'm interested. So we talked about the Reds last pod, I think it was. And what do you know, Ty? Nick Senzel, toe surgery. And obviously the first thing they say is it's not going to affect opening day status. We've been here before. Nick Senzel's out till 2025, most likely. No, but hopefully it doesn't. But I don't know. Like, Ronnie, are you a Senzel guy at all? Have you followed him? Have you been one of the fantasy guys that had him as that shortstop prospect, top 100 guy, and, like, you know, continued to roster him through this transition to a player who can't play because he's never healthy?
I think I've dodged the bullet there. I've never
owned
Senzel in any league. I've definitely tried to acquire him in like 18, 19 when he's coming up, but I think I might have dodged myself a bullet in that one.
Yeah, the price was high when he was a prospect because everything was like lining up for him to be an all-star. And Ty, I know you're not a big Senzel guy, but what do you think about, you know, yet another issue? And it's not just an injury, it's surgery. So there's recovery time here.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really been against Senzel, but he has zero track record of staying healthy. So, you know, for that reason, like, I'm out, right? Like, Sharks Den all day when it comes to Nick Senzel. And at the end of the day, it's just one of those guys that I've never really been interested in taking a risk because the outcome is we don't have enough upside to justify the injury risk. That's always been the equation for me. I don't see how I move off of that at any point in the near future, because even if he is healthy, like, that Reds team's just not deep enough. It's that simple.
Yep. No, I'm with you there. Now, the next one up here is Twins acquiring utility type dude, but really shortstop, Kyle Farmer. And that's after another trade that we're going to discuss. But I feel like he's in Minnesota to shore things up. If they end up with a healthy shortstop that's one of their younger guys, Farmer's just going to move around. But what do you guys feel about a guy like Farmer? I guess go Ty first here and then swing to Ronnie.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to the Mercado conversation. Like, Farmer's slightly better, but really just not enough juice. It's not worth the squeeze. And in today's fantasy environment, like, you gotta have a shortstop. Like, there's just too much of a gap between the upper tier shortstops and the back, you know, let's call it 7, 8, 9, 10 guys. Like, it's too far to fall, and Farmer falls in that bottom half. Yeah, he might be a starter. He might get significant at bats, but they're just not good enough. And if you're owning Kyle Farmer expecting to win, you're going to have a bad time.
Well, I owned Kyle Farmer last year in
Point
to be
proven.
named later. And I did my best, Rob, and I dumpster dived. I'm just pulling that up quick here. But I got him.
You want the stat line?
Dirt cheap last year. In auction, I think it was like $1.5 million, 1.75 out of a 200.
That's a great deal for Farmer.
Yep. And he put up 369 points in that league. And looking at what I finished the year with.
Yeah, in that 30-team league.
Yeah, he finished as a top 5 hitter on my team. So I rode him.
Okay.
To first place in my division, actually.
So one thing I'll flag, like, that's great points, but also going from Cincinnati to Minnesota, different ballpark, different environment. I can't imagine that those production numbers are going to stick.
This is right. I'm saying don't pay for the past, pay for the future. He's done me good last year, but I think to Rob's point, he's just going to bounce around, and he's going to need some luck to pull off a full season like he did last year.
Let me throw these numbers at you guys. I've got the last 2 years for Farmer because those are the first 2 years he was really starting. 483 at bats in 2021 and a full season last year, 526 at bats. on crappy teams both times, 58 and 60 runs. 58. The first number will be 2022. 14 and 16 home runs. 78 RBIs last year, career high. 63 the year before. Stolen bases irrelevant, 4 and 2. Not an OBP guy. 255 average last year. Previous year 263. 700 OPS, so not great, and 732 the year before, which you're fine with from a utility type shortstop. Headed into next year, he'll have third base and shortstop eligibility across the board. I feel like he might be a sleeper again, but he finished the year in I was about to say standard 5x5, but no, in 8x8, he finished as the 302nd ranked player. So that's a guy that gets drafted. So I feel like that's where he's going to be. He's going to be drafted in your 12-team leagues. So if he's a dynasty guy, he's going to have value. But to Ronnie's point, I just don't know what we can honestly expect. And certainly to Ty's point, not impact. We're not going to see a 285 average. All of a sudden, we're not going to see 25 home runs.
Here's the mic drop point. He got traded for a gentleman named Casey Leguminua or something close to that. And here's the stat line. So this is the end of whether he's going to be great, because this is two pro teams making an analysis. So Casey had a 4.80 ERA, a 1.436 WHIP, and a 4.96 K per nine. Okay, so this is a guy that has split between starting and relieving. The upside of that analysis suggests that he's being acquired to be a backup bat, right? And don't get me wrong, Kyle Farmer's a phenomenal first guy off the bench. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But as a starting position player on your fantasy team, no, I can't get there.
That's fair.
No, you need to. The situation would have to change for. He would need to have a starting job.
Yeah, I just don't see Minnesota not bringing in a shortstop. I just don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't see. I don't see this being the end. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, they were prepared to pay Correa a whole bunch of money. They got money to spend. Correa just didn't want to be there.
If I'm the Twins, I want Trey Turner though. I'll just say that, because that ballpark is built for Trey Turner to run around.
That would be so depressing if Trey Turner went there.
It would be depressing if Trey Turner went there and then Roy Lewis was good, and then they were like, what are we going to do? And then they moved Lewis or Turner, whatever, to second base. And then the whole world was like, neither of these things are supposed to happen.
It'd be like Robinson Cano going to Seattle again.
Trey Turner to center. Trey Turner to center.
Oh, no.
Buxton to left.
Why wouldn't you DH him? Get Buxton off the field. It doesn't matter how good he is at defense. He ends up getting hurt.
Yeah, but he's going to end up like a glitch in a video game, just slowly jogging off the bench and running into the outfield wall. So he needs to be close so he doesn't glitch out.
I would be concerned. Let's not break down the Twins. They don't deserve it. Ty, I hate to bring it up, but team post hype not looking good this podcast. Jeimer Candelario, who you led off with, he's now a free agent. We talked about it on a previous pod, how as the year goes on, he gets better. I want to know where you think he's going to go after Ronnie tells us his thoughts and feelings on a player like Candelario, a top 10 prospect, pretty much across the board consensus, and then traded. And, here we are. So, Ronnie, what do you think? Then we'll go to Ty. It should take 10, 15 minutes for Ty, I think.
Well, you're really close to being used Candelario in your opening. He hit 217. We're at 219 here.
I know. I saw it. I was like, I'm not doing that one, though.
Yeah. I've never really been in on him. I've definitely missed the boat, and I don't think I'm about to jump back in the ship now.
I'm all for these aquatic. What is it? Noddle.
I mean, looking at his stat last year was just so terrible compared to the his 20. Well, 20 doesn't really count. 21 season, and some of the other seasons he's put up. How old is he? 29.
Yeah.
Oh,
not a young man anymore.
I would not be busting my budget to acquire him. He would need to be a bonus piece I get or someone I sneak in. I just don't
like Victor Reyes, a borderline starter. Victor Reyes, who was released as well by the Tigers. He's not on the board, but he was released as well. He's a free agent. He's out there. Both guys deserving of in my mind, MLB contracts. But whether Candelario would be like, yeah, I'll fight for a job, or Reyes, yeah, I'll fight for an outfield job. But Ty, what are you thinking here? A 5-year, $100 million deal?
This just screams Oakland A's starting first baseman. Like, just screams.
No, that's Dennis Garcia. That's my boy, Dennis Garcia.
No,
don't you push him off.
Like, switch hitter, not a ton of lift, but good contact, decent exit
Big
velocities. It checks out. Now, I don't think he's going to sign there, because if I'm Candelario, I'm going to play in Cincinnati, or I'm going to play somewhere where there's an absolute bandbox. Like, I could see him being a depth bat in Chicago and the White Sox. I think that could be a really interesting
he knows
spot
the
for
division.
him. Yeah. Like, I think it's from the strategic part of free agency. Like, you see this a lot. Like, a lot of interdivision signings of guys like this. Like, it would fit what the White Sox need. Candelario is going to be looking for a 1-year deal. He's going to want to try to find a 4-year deal after the end of the next season. So no one's going to sign him to anything more than a really club-friendly 2-year deal. So, I think he's looking for one. The White Sox are an interesting fit. They have some at-bats that will be available there. So I think it could be a really, really strong possibility. And if that's the case, I like the upside, because I think the power, although never elite, could potentially, if there's at bats to get there, potentially could hit 20 home runs if he finds a groove. Now, that's an absolute shot in the dark because of what we saw last year. But I'm with Ronnie, what he was saying. Like, the previous stat line suggests there's more here, and last year was an anomaly. And they're just saying, okay, we want to make sure we don't have anybody blocking the couple guys we want to get at bats, which is fine, because that's where Detroit's at. So I like this move for Detroit. I like it for Candelario. I hope he finds a hitter-friendly park, and I think that's the best option.
All right, so definitely we'll have to watch to see where he signs, but don't anybody be penciling him in, even in your 30-team leagues. Don't count on him. But speaking of the White Sox, the fun, exciting news, Garrett Crochet, recovering from Tommy John. He's already throwing, not a regular routine this offseason. He's going to begin the season, I think, on the 60-day DL, but he should be back in May, depending on exactly how they do all that crap. I'm just saying right now, buy low opportunity for the person who has him, who, like me, suffered all last year wanting to see some impact from him, was excited at the idea that he could become a starter, and then we lost him to Tommy John. I think a buy low opportunity here for Crochet is good. Prospect status is long gone because he came up so early. I'm curious what either of you, I've heard Ty. I've heard Ty's negativity on Crochet. I want to hear, Ronnie, do you have any positive things to say?
Well, Ty's going to have all the advanced stats. That's not my game. I just see this guy has never had a career start in his life.
I was going to say, so if Ty's advanced stat guy, are you old man yells at cloud guy?
No, that might be closer.
Your team chemistry guy?
I don't know, but my methods seem to beat him in every league I've ever played with. So
okay, well, let's save that for a future podcast.
For a future. Yeah, I'm not running out to get him. Okay. At this point in my mind, he's a reliever. He's going to come back as a reliever. He needs to prove that he's going to start. And if he's just a reliever, I don't get excited about non-closing relievers or non-setters.
Right, yeah, because the White Sox certainly don't need a closer. They've got
and I expect the White Sox to have like 5 or 6 legitimate starters. So he's going to probably come back to the bullpen and then need an injury to happen, and then take off from there.
So the buy low opportunity might be limited to just my own field of vision.
Sure, you can buy
leagues
low.
I didn't draft.
I'll buy low on anyone, depending on my league format, if I can stash them. But I'm not buying low because
right. Well, that's the reason why I bring it up, because typically your dynasty leagues aren't going to have an IL right now, so you have to play within your roster parameters without the advanced. Without the ability to use your IL. So certain players, like I was referring to Harper earlier, with that big salary, you don't want to hold on to them during the offseason. You want to go get other guys. And then Crochet would just be basically a roster spot. And like you said, an RP all year, that's not going to be sexy. I'm just thinking what they were able to do with Kopech. I want to see the same thing with Crochet. Ty, would you say that Alex Reyes is a guy that you liked?
We skipping over Crochet?
I don't want to hear it from you. You're just
I haven't heard
negative. I'm muting this. For me, that's
I hate this fucking.
So I mean, here's the thing. Like, he's coming off the TMJ. We are gonna have at least half a season of him throwing absolute bricks all over the stadium. So, I'm just not ready to buy him. I'm gonna wait until he sucks and everybody's like, this guy is so terrible. Then I'm gonna buy him, because I actually think, from a reliever perspective, that he's actually a nice addition to pretty much any roster. He's gonna give you strikeouts if you're running relievers out in pretty much any format. Then he can't hurt you from that perspective. But it's going to take a little while. He's never going to be a starter. I've been telling him this to Rob for years, but he keeps believing that left-handed guy that with weird arm angle that throws gas isn't destined to be a reliever. He didn't listen to me when I was like, Chris Sale's going to be injured anytime now,
my
like 7 years ago.
circa 2016.
So, I mean, I feel like we're in a very similar scenario here. I just think he's a good relief arm. I don't know why you would want to, if like worst case, make him a 2-inning guy. Like, I just don't see why you would want to make him a starter. I just don't see it.
And I'm not going out to get any relievers. I will find relievers in season. I'm not gonna run out and
I mean, league dependent though, right? Like, if you're in a league that only counts saves, Crochet is obviously not a target if that's what you're looking for. But we play in and generally talk about deeper leagues where you'll have 4 RP spots or 5 in some, and those guys carry value. But yeah, like, to not have you can find some guys, but you got to be the first guy on it, right? Like, it's hard to say I'm going to find them if you don't at least have a base in place from whatever April on.
Yeah,
you got to have a good record to care about some of the leagues too. Especially
and Alex Reyes is the right-handed version here, right? Like, a guy that has starter upside but is a reliever, and leave him as a reliever. I actually think Alex Reyes is going to be a really good sign this year. I think somebody could end up with a really cheap version of a decent reliever, and if they can somehow talk him into a couple years based on his injury risk, I actually think there could be a huge victory for whatever GM can accomplish that. Like, Pittsburgh as a 2-year deal, love it. Like, I would love Alex Reyes in Pittsburgh. I think that would be a phenomenal fit. They could use more and more bodies, like people that actually want to play in Pittsburgh. So that bodes well for Reyes. But I think there's enough here. We've seen it. It's not nothing, and I don't think it's gone yet. So I just think St. Louis is just done with the merry-go-round, and I think it's that simple.
He would have cost more this year as well, which I think was the other big reason. So I don't know if Ronnie, if you have anything on that, or if you want to move on to our Coloradan.
We can move on. I've been burned by Alex Reyes enough.
All right. Well, speaking of burned, Dinelson Lamet owners caution. He is returning to Colorado. I believe it was a minor league deal, and that's all he deserves. He's lucky he's not going to the KBO. That'll be next year. But Dinelson Lamet, do either of you care? Ty?
Nope. 2 pitches. I need 3. Bye.
Well,
which you've been saying for a couple years. So
I'm pretty sure it was a minor league deal because it was $5 million. Or sorry, major league.
Oh, it was a major league deal. Oh, geez.
Well,
okay.
That'd be a really expensive minor league deal. But I don't want to own any Colorado pitcher ever. So
he's their opening day starter then at 5. It's German Marquez, I guess, then him. Okay, yeah, that's dangerous for Colorado.
How do you have a 6 ERA in San Diego and you're gonna that's not gonna go well.
You make $5 million the next year. But a guy who's going to make just under $20 million, Martin Perez, is going back to the Texas Rangers. Ronnie, what do you think about him? He was once gored by a bull, by the way.
Oh, I did not know that.
Who let Bob Uecker in?
Yeah, this podcast has facts.
Let's see. He's almost threw 200 innings last year. Look at that. And how many throw the 114 before? How old is he? 31. I would the way I play a lot of my deeper leagues, I am more of a bulk quantity than paying up for the top-notch guy, although I do like to have one. This guy would 169K. Yeah, definitely fit my mold. If I can get him for without breaking the bank and just stockpile my,
Mhm.
slightly above average arms and just go to town with bulk SP. That is my claim to fame.
Well, I think his biggest asset that might be underrated and is absolutely league dependent, 23 quality starts.
I don't.
So
I think that last year was the career year though, so you're
absolutely. Yeah.
probably gonna be creeping up into the 4 ERA again. Hopefully the
Well,
Ks can still stay, but
I just don't think he's going to be a cheap acquisition, whether you're dealing with somebody who's rostering him or you're trying to pick him up in like a draft. He's absolutely going to be,
yeah,
a top
everyone's
10.
gonna look at those last year's numbers and
Yeah, if he for some like if you're in a contracts league that does a draft after, contracts expire, Perez will be a top 10 pick this
the
year for
guy
you.
never
So,
since 2013 he's never had an ERA under 4, and then he jumps to 2.89. He hasn't had an ERA under 4.39 until last year. And his whip's always been
So
disgusting too. So
one thing, Ronnie, though, is that if you look at previous years, the last part of the season, Perez historically has gotten absolutely lit, and those numbers are a little skewed if you look at it from that perspective. However, he is not the guy you want to run out there in championship season. That's part of that point. But I agree with most of what you're saying in terms of league or career year. I'm out on Perez. I've liked Perez. I've had him several times over the past couple of years. He's a useful arm. You just have to know when to sit him. That's the big thing with Perez. But I do think he will have one additional benefit this year as the Rangers continue to come up. Wins. We'll see more wins out of Martin Perez this year. If he's a fraction of what he was last season, we could see 13, 15 wins out of Martin Perez this year.
yeah, that would be fun. Another guy who was a surprise last year, not to the same level, but I was looking for him in the offseason, and then he got traded from the Yankees to the Twins, was able to get 500 at bats, carved out a perfectly good season with a high enough average, 285, is Gio Urshela, who also had 13 bombs with that and 61 runs, 64 RBIs, 767 OPS as well. I'm going to mention that fact. And now he's with the Angels, and I think he's just going to be their starting shortstop. They tried that crap last year with a defensive first guy, and they need to win ball games. The nice thing with Urshela is he is probably your MLB leader for great guy to swap over from short to third when Anthony Rendon, gets a little nick on his finger, and it turns out it's tendonitis, and he's got to get amputation. So I really like this addition for the Angels. It gives them a few Taylor Ward type guys with Urshela to just be productive guys, not necessarily, peak guys, but they already have the Trouts of the world. And as Ty is going to tell us, they have Mickey Moniak. We know things are on the up and up here. So, but what do you guys think about Urshela? He's often forgotten. He's the guy that was in Toronto, right? Toronto let him go when he went to the Yankees. Yeah. So he's got a fun story of nobody wanted him, and now he's a productive MLBer. But what do you guys think for fantasy purposes?
I was like you last year. I was trying to get him buying low after the Yankees sent him away.
Yeah.
I think his situation is the same, if not better, in LA. For he's gonna get the
more
time.
Support with the Angels. At least
he has
for
2
opening
hitters.
day, right?
Well, 3
for
hitters
opening day.
Yeah. two faders for sure, but see how Rondon does. Should have better run lineup or support there. This would be a buy low candidate for me. This is one I'd actually agree with you with, and would like to, get some Urshela in my deeper leagues.
Yeah.
I just don't see where the at bats are. Like, I think he's going to be a useful piece. I think he falls into Kyle Farmer territory. I think you got David Fletcher. We're going to see Rendon for at least 8 games this season. You're going to have
first homestand,
right? We're going to have some short.
Then he's out.
We're going to have some shortstop at bats for sure. I think out there for Urshela at the very least in the backup spot. But like Luis Rengifo has become a very reasonable at bat guy. Like, he's not gonna murder it, but you need a guy that can hit 8-9 on that roster, because that's the spots that are open, right? So David Fletcher's gonna be back, Rendon's gonna be back, right? And the rest of that roster is relatively solidified. So I just don't know where the at bats are for him outside of shortstop. Like, that's it.
I think this might be up your alley, Ty. This is gonna be spring training to watch. Who's got the better numbers between Yeah,
do this.
David Fletcher. Like David Fletcher's never been hot shit. He's just been like, eh. But
He's been an average only guy.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
his thing.
There's
Yeah.
no power there. There's just
Well, I
average
mean,
only.
we can wait for it.
Can't wait
Yeah.
for the spring training statistics when you guys.
Oh,
start around.
baby.
And you,
I hope you improve
when you
it,
remember
but
when you're
at
talking
least the
Urshela.
listeners know.
Yes.
Well,
Like
for
you
what?
need to change that thing, Ty. You need to change that so
No.
that people hear something about spring training stats matter. Something you gotta just it.
No, it's a spring training vibe. It's a mindset.
Okay.
It's a path to success. You
I just feel
manifest
really warm when
your
you start
spring
playing.
training. Yeah, like all I'm thinking about is board shorts and half a t-shirt, right? Like that's all I've got.
Do you cut holes in the back like slits like the Macho Man? Oh
will create-
yeah.
You
Let's
got the
see.
sunglasses for it.
I will create any
Yeah, yeah.
t-shirt I want.
Another guy's spring training stats might be a big one here. Team Post hype, former Miami Marlin, now Pittsburgh Pirate, Lewin Diaz. He's there. It's now all of a sudden we've got another guy added, Carlos Santana. I'm going to very quickly add him to the list. He signed 1 year, 6.75 with the Pirates as well. Highest deal for the Pirates, just so we all know, since 2017 when Daniel Hudson signed a 2-year, $11 million deal. So, and then what's the was it J-Man Choi was there? He's there now. Three
Yep.
guys for two at most two positions. So, Ty, what are your thoughts then, Dero?
In terms of Santana, I like it because I think they brought him in as an asset. Like, and I love these deals. Like, these are guys I love to chase because, like, I know he's going to a contender. Like, he's going to find himself. He's a switch hitter with a little bit of pop. He's clutch. He sees pitches. Like, he is going to find himself onto a good roster in championship season. Like, that's the big thing here. So, like, what I really want him to do is I want him to fail epically for the first 30, 60, maybe even 90 days of the season. And then I want to go buy him for nothing when he ends up as an afterthought on the Phillies championship roster, right? Like that's the kind of guy that I like to acquire. So that's what I see him as. And it's a 1-year deal in Pittsburgh. Like there's no other way to phrase it.
It's a considerable amount of money for the production, like a sub 700 OPS, a 202 average. The K rate was above 25% last year, right at 25 maybe. Obviously OBP leagues, he's going to have value for you there. He had 71 walks last year, which is awesome, and 19 dingers. But like you said, Ty, maybe a crappy start is the right medicine for him. But and then same with Lewin Diaz. Like, what do you think about the trifecta of those guys? I guess Ronnie, if you want to talk about the J-Man Choi, Diaz, Carlos Santana thing, and then Ty, you can top that off.
Let's bust out my guitar. Let's see, what's his name? Lewin Diaz. I've owned Lewin Diaz. I think I still own Lewin Diaz. Actually, I owned Lewin Diaz or rostered him. Let me correct myself there. Until recently, and I just had to release him just because he doesn't really do anything in the majors league. So he's in Pittsburgh now, so he has a shot to get playing time because who is playing for Pittsburgh?
Well, you end up in Pittsburgh, and then you go to the KBO.
Yeah.
That's the final step for a prospect who keeps failing. Who was the former J that went there? The outfielder.
Eric Thames.
No, not Thames.
He went there.
Travis Snyder.
No, but him too.
Oh.
No, it was
Alfred.
Thank you, Anthony Alford.
Oh yeah, I have
Alfred's the case I was thinking.
I can do this all day. Just give me some time.
But that's the disappointing thing, right? Is that when you see a guy go to Pittsburgh, you're like, hey, there are at bats, but then you have to remember the guys who go there and fail, and that's failed to impress the Pittsburgh brass to keep getting at bats. And I'm now fearful of Lewin Diaz's MLB career. His prospect status has been gone for a while now. But dynasty people, you still wanted, Ty talked about it last year. There's a guy there's a shot here for him, but I'm concerned now with this like trifecta this early in the off season that Diaz could accidentally be buried and be a AAA to start the season guy.
I'm just looking at their their depth chart. I don't see where he's playing. O'Neill's got shortstop. Hayes got third base. Santana's got first base.
Well, Choi's your DH with Santana. Your first base is also Choi and Santana. And then what are you gonna do with Diaz, right? Where's he gonna go?
Yeah,
I think Diaz needs a little more seasoning. I think they're going to give him half a season in the minors, and then you have two guys, in Choi and Santana that are trade assets. So I think
And
Diaz
let's
is
not
there to be
forget,
a guy that's there after.
Mason Martin is also at AAA, and he did
Yeah,
not have a great year last year, so he also needs proving ground for himself before he'll get a promotion. But he could certainly be a second half guy. That's not this episode, but just talking about the idea of where guys will gain at bats or lose them.
Yeah.
Diaz could be losing them if he's AAA and they put Martin there. So anyway, less notable note, but Brett Rooker is now with the A's, former Twin prospect, got at bats last year. I just think it's kind of an interesting move for the Athletics, just adding a dude, right? Adding a dude. And then Ty, I figured you'd like this one. Slapdick prospect Xavier Edwards, shipped from Tampa Bay to Miami for RP. And again, the Dingers official podcast rule is we don't care who leaves Tampa Bay. We want to know who they're getting back. And they're getting back a relief pitcher, JT Chargos, Chargois.
Yeah,
So,
did they not own him before? I feel like he was
Edwards?
no,
no,
Chargos.
Chargos.
Yeah, I feel like he was a former Ray already. I feel like he might have went in the Nick Anderson trade, maybe.
Okay.
I
So they're
could
just
be
maybe
wrong
getting
there.
a guy back.
Yeah, like a guy that they liked before. But Edwards is an interesting guy, like a little bit of a contact tool. He was in the top 100 pre-20.
Well, he
This
doesn't
is
suck, right? He does not suck. Even in the minors, he's fine, but he's third team now.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some concern. There's no arguments there. There's not enough stolen bases in the upper minors for me to say that that's there.
Mhm.
This could legitimately just be a depth piece, right? And you've got a switch hitter with a little bit of speed. Those guys play. Like there's room for those kind of guys, and maybe they want to put them in center field. Like maybe they want to reposition them because as much as they've got Dela Cruz or whatever that guy's name is in center that's been mucking around. Like this gives them some options. You've got some infield upside. You could move them to center. Like I think this is just a chess piece that they want to see if they can free up either like a Brian Anderson to trade, or do they want to potentially look at exiting what's his face Chisholm, who's caused them all kinds of
don't you dare.
I'm just saying he rubbed some people the wrong way there. I'm just throwing it out there that he could be a trade asset. They're not ready to win, and maybe he's not the guy. Like you could turn him into another guy. Like, there's lots of people that want a left-handed middle infielder. So like that's definitely something that could happen. I wouldn't rule it out. Just it's a potable, if you will.
I think you're just taking an unfair shot at Jazz.
I got nothing wrong with Chas, the baseball player. He's on my MLB The Show team, so that means how it tells you how I feel about him.
And have you been playing that very much?
No, not really.
No, I have started to play the Wayne Gretzky version of NHL from the Wii with my son, who's 6 years old. He loves it. Every time we start, he's like, "Can I be the goalie?" And then I have to remind him, "You can't be the goalie." But then he just likes to try to be the goalie. We're learning. Anyway, a couple of quick ones here. Everybody remember Puig? Yeah. Okay. So he pleaded guilty to lying to authorities during a gambling investigation. It doesn't matter, but he'll never be in the MLB again. So if for some reason you're holding on to him, like I was, Roberto Ramos, the time to cut is now. Big time AAA power bat the last couple of years. Matt Davidson, who was in Arizona and then ended up in Oakland, I think. He's off to the KBO. So for your super deep leagues where you're like, this is a guy who gets things done, maybe he's worth an asset or worth a younger asset in season. Nope, he's out for this year. And this is a very interesting one. I'm interested in your thoughts, guys, because I'm sure all of us have at one time or another rostered Mr. Shelby Miller. Yep, that Shelby Miller, the former Cardinal, then Brave, then Diamondback, then injured. And anyway, he apparently is likely to get an MLB contract because of 2 solid years with high K counts at AAA. So a dynasty RP flyer for your deeper leagues. But Ronnie, what do you think of a guy like Shelby Miller? And do you have any history with him? And then same question to Ty.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had a time machine because
Exactly.
I haven't
How
seen
far
a
back do
Shelby
you need to
Miller
go?
since 2015, so it's been 7 years?
Yeah.
I would not go back to Shelby Miller train. I'll take my chances on the waiver wire in season.
He did have, I think, 4 appearances last year with the Giants in September.
He did.
Again,
With
just
a
whatever.
6.43 ERA. That didn't work out so well.
That could
7
happen to
innings.
any of us.
4 appearances. He didn't start.
I can confirm it happens in my men's league.
They're all relief appearances.
Yeah. Oh yeah, his
I
starting
mean-
days are over. It's as a relief pitcher
Alright.
that he would
If it's
come
a
back.
relief pitcher, I'm going to the beer fridge. I'll be back.
Ronnie, as a car guy, should be all over Shelby because he knows the Shelby
No.
brand gets better with time. So, I think that is
Very
the
well
place-
done, Ty. I
Right?
like it.
So, I actually think there's some upside here because it's never been a
Yeah.
lack of stuff for Shelby Miller. It's just been an inability to miss barrels and or hit the plate in the first place. So, I think that's the stuff that, a good minor league second career can solve. And anytime right now a pitcher has time with the Giants, I'm listening because they've turned several guys around now that, had stuff, then disappeared, and now are again there, like Rodon, Descalfini,
Well, for a
Gausman,
year and change,
Rodon.
Ty, Jake McGee was a similar story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So Adam did he did not finish well, but
Mhm.
time. What's the Moneyball line? Time takes us all or gets us all, whatever.
Yeah.
There was a line. There was a line from that
Yeah.
movie.
The
Get him.
time
get on
tells
base.
us when we're done playing the children's game or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something baseball, Moneyball. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, there's enough bad teams that need relievers. Like Shelby Miller
Yeah.
probably gets a shot, right? I mean, that's the reality. Whether he signs a major league deal or not, I'm not ready to say that. I think it's a minor league with a camp invite wherever he ends up, and maybe there's some bonus built into that or whatever. But I think at this stage, he's trying to fight to live, and he has enough clout from his past that he's going to look for one of those opt-out deals. If I'm not on the roster by this time,
Okay.
I want to go find another spot, right?
Well, I only put it on because I had I'd read multiple different reports of this, and I thought you typically don't do rumors, but this is one for dynasty owners that maybe we can get ahead a bit on it. A couple things, just housekeeping stuff. Edwin Diaz is officially a Met next 5 years, so break out the trumpets. 5 years, 102 million. Yeah, that'll work out well.
luck.
Then Robert Suarez, 5 years with San Diego, 46 million. That's interesting, but the most interesting one is 3 years for the Houston Cheaters, re-signing Rafael Montero. Bullpen helped, assigning value in different ways, and they're paying him great. But Montero's not a closer, and this is just a dude. Probably more interesting for us for fantasy purposes is the Hunter Renfroe from the Brew Crew to the Angels deal. Ty, this affects your boy Mickey Moniak, your other boy Adele.
This actually just plays directly into my Mickey Moniak for a catcher trade. I love this.
Sorry,
I think,
wait, hold on.
Yeah.
What is this?
so
What is this
my
theory?
running theory at the moment is the Toronto Blue Jays have excess catchers. The Angels have no catchers.
Oh no.
Left-handed bat, center fielder, Mickey Moniak, straight up for either Kirk and or Danny Jansen. Like I don't believe this is a Moreno trade, which I think a lot of people are assuming the Jays are going to make. But I actually well, but I mean, what's Renfroe got? One more year, right? This is a weird deal. Like he's coming in to hit bombs and play outfield defense, right? That's it. They needed an answer in right field, so they don't have to run Ohtani out there. Like that's all this is. So for me, I think it potentially means one of Adele or Moniak's on the move. And I think if it's Moniak, I think Toronto's in play for that because we need somebody that can cover off Springer and center, right? And we've got a catcher, which LA desperately needs. So there's an alignment there if that's what LA is trying to do. So
Ronnie,
we
your
know,
thoughts on that?
I'm hoping the Jays want to trade Alejandro Kirk, and I hope that Manoah isn't listening to me. But I'm not believing in Kirk's legs in the long term, so I really like to cash in that chip early. And I'm
why did this
not
is the
doing
one
it
thing
for
I find
Mickey.
it. This is the one thing I find interesting, right? Like if you look at Alejandro Kirk, and everyone keeps saying knees, catcher. Like, look at the guys with long careers at the catcher position. Like, how many of them are skinny beanpoles? It's almost none of them, right? So this is a thing I keep hearing about Kirk. It doesn't make any sense. And not to mention the guy's 5'9" or whatever he is. Like, he's not a big human. So the impact on your knees and ankles should be significantly less versus like a Brian McCann, who was a monster back there, right? Like, I just don't get that debate. But we need a left-handed bat, and we need it in the outfield, and the ones in free agency are expensive. So give me a catcher. Give me Dane Jansen. Dane Jansen's a perfect fit for this trade. We've got 2 years left.
I would do it for Jansen. Kirk, I want to get more, and I would prefer
Yep.
to trade Kirk to get more, and then roll with Jansen and
But
Montero.
what left-handed bat could potentially be available, right? Anyway, we're talking Hunter Renfroe. Let's get back on topic. We'll save this one for later. But Hunter Renfroe, for me, it impacts who we talked about earlier, which is the shortstop position. Like the extra bats at the DH spot now are crowded by what's going on in that outfield. You've got 3 outfield at bats and a left-handed bat, right, in that outfield. And now you have to find a spot for Urshela, right, to potentially, when he's not playing shortstop, have DH at bats. And so I find it very, very interesting. And ultimately, there has to be another shoe to drop for the Angels.
Okay. I like that. I appreciate that you waited until towards the end of the comments to dive in. I did make the Blue Jay one the last one to talk about, but we're still one away. Jansen Junk, who's an RP, I think, was also back in that deal. Elvis Figueroa and Adam Seminaris are the 3 going back for Hunter Renfroe. So we'll have to follow along with their story to see if Milwaukee can make anything of that. One of the deals that kind of came from the Kyle Farmer to the Twins, which is a reaction to the Urshela to the Angels, is that the Pirates said, MLB players, we don't need those. And Kevin Newman left to go to the Reds, which I'm a little concerned about because Jose Barrio is still there, guys. And I know he batted a $106, I think it was last year, $161, whatever it was, doesn't matter. It just seems like Newman is going to come into the Reds and get at bats next year. Shortstop, probably, most likely. But he's added for fantasy purposes. Do we care, really? The park's great. Is the player worth it? Ty?
I mean, for me, Kyle Farmer, like, repeat. Like, we're in the same territory. I don't care. I'm not in on this guy. It's just a mediocre defensive guy, less than mediocre offensive guy. I think he's there to fill a gap till your aforementioned Barrio is ready. I think it's that simple.
We're in Dynasty League. We talk a lot about 30-team leagues. Everyone can't have a stud shortstop. Sometimes you're gonna just need a Kevin Newman.
Right. Who did have a 274 average last year, but there's no power, and stolen bases were single digits. But again, he had like half a season, 288 at bats. Newman has not been a big average guy before, never been a power guy, never been a stolen base guy. But to your point, Ronnie, perhaps with the ability to play every day. I mean, again, he's going from a crappy.
If you are in a
Pittsburgh
30-team league and you have players that are everyday players, they automatically have value no matter how terrible they are.
Well, as a guy who's had, yeah. Well, I wasn't going to say Gallo. I was going to say, as a guy who drafted Hassan Kim 1-3 a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
He is basically an everyday player. But anyway, the last point of trade or player acquisition before we get into the open end of this is the blockbuster trade between the Mariners and the Blue Jays. And by blockbuster, I mean they might need to go to blockbuster because they got robbed. Teoscar Hernandez is now a Mariner with Julio and company. And Adam Macko, who I think has SP3 potential, and that's peak potential here, best case scenario. And apparently useful relief pitcher Eric Swanson came back. So I don't know. Ty, should I bottle you up or should I let you go? Would you want to go first on this one?
No, let's Ronnie go first. I want to see his stats.
All right.
I saw this trade come across the other week, and I was like, what the heck is going on here? I saw, Tio was announced first, but then they didn't say who was coming.
Right.
And then I see Swanson and Macko. I'm like, I've owned Swanson in 30-team leagues. I've cut Swanson. He's just like
Yes.
whatever. And then
More
last
than
year,
once I have
yeah.
let go of Eric Swanson.
I'm like, what? And then I saw they got Mako, and I'm like, okay, so you got like a top 250 prospect. That's great. Really, that's all we could do. I understand Tio's in a contract year, and they're not going to be able to re-sign everyone with Vlad and Bo, so like he was gonna go, but I don't understand why that team just didn't hang on to him until a couple months into the season and trade him in season. I feel like what they got for him today, they could get for him at the worst case scenario. Let a few months play out and see if you can cash in the chips a bit more.
All right, Ty, your thoughts?
I actually disagree on this one. I actually think Toronto won this trade, and I might be in the minority on that one. Teo's great. I love Teo as a hitter. Teo is freaking useless as a defender.
That I will agree with, yes.
So, like, when you look at the grand scheme of the game of baseball, you know, I think this made the Toronto Blue Jays a better baseball team. Now, from a fantasy perspective, is this a good move for somebody that owns Teo to make this trade? No, it's not. But we're not talking fantasy baseball when we're analyzing that trade. So for me, I like it. I actually think the upside on Mako is just significant. Like, we're talking a career minor league K per 9 of 14, right? Like, those are elite numbers.
Mhm.
And this is a guy that has a whip. And guess what? And Robbie's heard me say this, like, tall, lanky lefty. Okay. I mean, he's not that tall, but he's a lanky lefty. And these guys take time. They just take time. Big upside curveball, big upside fastball, screams like upside starter. And I think 3 is low. I think there's upside of 1, but I think realistic 2. I think is where I have Mako. I love this trade because I think Mako is primed to be a big climber. Like, I think at the end of this season, we're going to be saying very different things about Mako. And Swanson's a guy that we absolutely needed. Like, there just is no way around that. The Jays desperately needed bullpen, back end stability. And we got Yimi Garcia, who gives us that. We got Eric Swanson that gets that. And Ronnie's favorite closer in the world, Jordan Romano, is there to shut the door. Like, you now have a 3-headed monster in the back end of that bullpen.
Are you considering Mitch White in the rotation, Ty? Sorry, I didn't. Just
today, right now, yeah. What other option is there? Like, yeah.
I just think Swanson and Mitch White are kind of a similar type of pitcher. With Mitch White being like the discounts Ross Stripling as he's being tagged.
Swanson's got heavy stuff, and he throws a splitter, which immediately
he's
means
a single
he moves up my board.
Single inning pitcher. That's what you're thinking.
Yeah. He's never gonna be a starter. Like, he's the 8th inning guy. Like,
I'm sorry, I couldn't tell this is sarcasm. Mitch White is hot garbage. What? I would not
that's why I said,
anywhere near my starting rotation.
No, but Mitch White is we live in the Sportsnet bubble, which is of course the team that owns it. You guys know that, but for the listeners, so Mitch White is being talked about as if he is going to become a very useful pitcher for the Jays.
And what's his name? Oh my God, gapping on it.
It's just the Sportsnet boys, It's
so like without looking, boys. What was Mitch White's ERA last year?
I already looked a second ago. I had to confirm that this was
Robbie,
as crazy as I thought it was.
3.6, but I was initially thinking over 4.
Yeah, it's 3.7. Like Mitch White, hot garbage. Like, I'm not there. Like, sure, when the wheels fall off, like, Mitch White sucks, right? But that's okay out of your SP5.
What was his inning count last year? Was he 70?
56. So
50, okay.
Again, like, room for upside, but like location stuff, solid.
Mitch
right?
White's combined ERA was 5.45 between LA and Toronto.
We're not talking about combined ERA, Ronnie.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie.
His Dodgers was 3.66, so I'm not sure how his Toronto one could be better than 3.66 if it's combined.
Well, I don't know. I'm looking at Baseball Savant. It says 2022 3.7. That's it. I'm done there. But anyway, point is, there's more in the tank for Mitch White. Like, everyone said, Ross Stripling couldn't be good, and he was just fine. So there is ways around this. I like Mitch White as a buy low because what's the worst thing that happens, right? You cost you nothing. You gain huge upside. I'm in for a buy on Mitch White.
Just to clarify, Mitch White ERA 545 last year, 78 Ks in 99 innings with a 1-7 record. One quality start though. Not that that's what you hang your hat on, but no save holds as well. So
His
really,
Toronto ERA is 7.74.
okay.
His Dodgers
Okay,
ERA is
this makes
7.37.
more sense than the 3.7. That's why I flagged it,
Yeah.
because I'm looking at it right here and it says 3.7. Like, I'm not making that up.
Yeah, it's his
So
Dodgers.
I don't know
His
why
NL
that.
Dodgers.
Well,
That's
that's the only one that
exactly.
matters, because that's the upside. Like, but
That's the
that's
one
the
that
upside.
matters
That's
before the trade.
But that's what we're talking about, though, is upside.
Yeah,
Right?
so
Like, we're
Eric
not.
Swanson for upside tie.
Sure.
Just so we're getting some positive stuff. 17 save holds, 70 Ks and 53 2/3. To your point, he was dynamite. 168 ERA, ranked 110th in 8x8 categories. He's great. And as well, to Ty's point, Teoscar Hernandez, every single stat line from 2021 to 2022 was going the wrong direction. And everyone. The only difference was that he had 50 less at bats, which would only affect the counting stats, but everything was on the negative side. But again, we're talking a guy who had 550 at bats to a guy who had 500 at bats. I just felt I kind of like you, Ronnie. I was like, that's the return. And when I looked at Mako and I quickly did the scouting report and went on YouTube and looked at him pitch, I'm like, okay, I get it. Mako's the guy in this trade, but Eric Swanson is the guy that the Jays were like, no, that's the guy. Mako's the flyer. Because the Jays are like all up in their heads with these odd moves that just seem like they keep wanting to acquire the diamond in the rough instead of just getting the like tried and true proven.
But Swanson's control till 26, right? Like, if you look at what the Jays have done in the bullpen, everybody's been like bullpen. Well, guess what? This is the last piece of the bullpen. You have 7, 8, 9 guys now that could fill the roles in that bullpen, all with a couple of years here, like, except for Anthony Bass. Like, that bullpen's stable and cool. It could even get better. Like, that's the great part. Like, there's nothing about that bullpen, maybe with the exception of a second left-handed arm, that is weak. So you now are in a position of strength. Well, Taylor Sasato is still my guy. Like, Taylor Sasato is going to be the guy this year. But anyway, we're getting off topic. The point is Eric Swanson is a solid addition to the back end of the pen. Fact. Mako has huge upside. Fact. I believe for a 1 year of Teoscar, when you're dealing from right-handed power depth like Toronto did, I think this is a win for Toronto.
To me,
and
it
for
comes
everybody,
down to the concurrent move that goes with this, depending on who they sign or who they trade for. So then you look at it as Teo out and X player in the outfield are in, plus Mako, plus Swanson. Sure, if they stand pat and they don't do anything, I'm not going to be happy about it. But depending on how they fill that outfield.
Go get Mickey Moniak, spend like the $4 million it costs to get him, right? You remove Danny Jansen's $8 million arbitration. Boom, we're laughing.
Okay, and then the final side for the Mariners, you're the Blue Jay fans. I'm the Mariner fan on this side here. Adding Teoscar, you can expect a dip in initial production, but he is replacing the Mitch Haniger, the Kyle Lewis, the Jared Kelenic failures that were making Seattle's initial part of 2022 unsuccessful, and he is going to immediately upgrade that team wire to wire as a veteran professional baseball player who can hit for power, who can drive guys in. And they're going to be banking on, with the moves they made, trading out Kyle Lewis, Jared Kelenic becoming a legitimate MLB outfielder to go along with Teoscar, to go along with Julio Rodriguez, and all the good things there. So it's a good trade because Seattle, although they lose an impactful RP, they have so many. So it's legitimately like addition by subtraction because they are getting that great outfielder that they want. The Mitch Haniger 2021 season is what they're hoping for from Teoscar in 2023. And they still have Jesse Winker to figure out what to do with. They still have Eugenio Suarez at third base. They've got a lot of pieces to move around. So it's a good trade for both teams when you break it down. But when you initially look at it, it's definitely a head scratcher. But that's why I thought it was a good thing to do last. And my final point is just I want to toss this up to you guys. So Ty, you kind of alluded to it earlier. What do you guys think? Just we're going to Blue Jay out here. So if you're not Blue Jay fans, smell you later, poopsicles. We'll catch you on the next podcast. But for anyone who's interested, fantasy perspective or otherwise, Blue Jays, what are you guys hoping to see from them this off season? Because we're not doing a free agent episode, but just What do you want to see the Jays get? And I mean, tie in some fantasy thing because that's our podcast. Let's give it to Ronnie first. Ty can bring us home.
After we get a new GM, I'm just kidding, because that's not gonna happen now. But
Dare to dream. Dare to dream.
Dare to dream. I would like to see one of those catchers traded for a starting pitcher, because I feel like after the top two, we fall off hard. I don't have any faith in Jose Barrios anymore. Kikuchi's trash. Rio, I think he's out again, or I'm not sure what the status is there, but I got nothing happening.
For
So you have
Barrios? Was that who you're talking about?
no Hanjin Ryu.
Oh, Rio. He'll be back at some point this year, in theory, but he's not
So
going to be able to start the season.
They need someone to fill actual number 3, because you can't count on Jose Barrios at this point. Then they can go internal with the 5th spot. But I'd like to see them get a pitcher, a starting pitcher specifically. And then obviously I could need a right fielder, because right now I don't know who's playing right field.
For our friends at Roster Resource, who we proceed to crap on all the time, Whit Merrifield is the potential right fielder, with Lourdes in left and George Springer in center field. This is the fun addition to the bench, though, guys. I wanted to read this off. Here's your bench for the Blue Jays: Kevin Biggio, Spencer Horowitz, Otto Lopez, pardon me, and Nathan Lukes. Oh my goodness!
I just traded for Spencer Horowitz today in a 30-man league.
Oh, did you? Well, that rotation that you were talking about is absolutely troublesome with Manoah, Gosman, Barrios, Kikuchi, and White. Now, obviously, it starts beautiful and then falls off a cliff when you get to SP4. Yeah. So there's gaps there.
I don't want to see Mitch White in my starting 5. I want to see Mitch White in Buffalo all year. That's where I want to see him. But yeah, we're gonna need at least a starter, maybe 2, and then another outfielder.
All right, Ty.
I mean, I know, Ronnie, you hate the GM in Toronto. I think he's done an unbelievable job building depth.
I'd trade him for Alex Anthopoulos. Do a trade.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I was an Anthopoulos guy myself, so that part I will defend. But beyond that, I really like what they've done. They've built huge organizational depth, although we don't have a ton at the upper minors right now. There's lots coming. We've got arm depth. We've got talent. We've been very active in the international class. So GM aside, I think he's done a great job. The bullpen for me is rebuilt, right? There's room for the over-the-top move at the trade deadline. That's there.
I don't see it being rebuilt. They added one guy. That one guy's rebuilt.
If you watch what Trevor Richards did in the back half, he was elite. Zach Pop is coming into his own, is going to be elite. You've added Eric Swanson. Yimi Garcia was a nice sign. Romano, does his job. It's shaky, but he gets it done. And you have Meza, who is a great left-handed arm. He just can't be your setup man. That's that simple. You add one more left-handed arm in Taylor Sasato, or you find a free agent lefty. There's really none out there. But
where Hanjin Ryu comes back as your bullpen lefty, also.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. Hanjin Ryu comes back as your SP4, which is fine. You're talking about an opening day starter a couple years ago, a solid number 2 behind Clayton Kershaw for years. We don't need him to be an ace. We need him to get us through 5 innings regularly.
Yeah,
that's it.
I mean,
right? And same with Mitch White.
Probably gonna start Kikuchi 5th and hope it works out. And
but guess what though? If we get a fraction of what we saw Kikuchi out of the bullpen in the last couple weeks, there's enough there. So I hated that signing. I still hate that signing. But I think there is upside. I think it's a project, and I think the last 2 years of this deal could be really good, where it's a complete opposite for Ryu. We knew signing Ryu, it was the back half of that deal that was going to suck, right? So that's where we're at there. So I'm for one more starter. I am. I don't think Barrios is going to be the same guy we saw last year. So I think we're one starter away, and I think if there's injuries or Mitch White, Kikuchi, etc., all fail, I think we're going to see Ricky Tiedemann next season. And I think he's going to plow through the way he's plowed through the entire minor league system so far. When your stuff's good, your stuff's good. So I think he's going to be one of the first guys in a very long time Toronto moves quickly on the pitching side. And we'll see. He's going to get an aggressive start at Double-A. He's going to have a prove it scenario, but I think one short-term deal on the starter side, as crazy as this sounds, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. But if Bauer was ever available, that would be a really, really interesting signing.
They won't touch that.
I know they won't, but it
Not
would be
in
an interesting
Toronto.
slot.
No.
No, I agree, but it would be the perfect fit for what Toronto needs: a short-term,
Oh,
high-end arm. It would be a missing piece for that team. That's the kind of deal I'm looking for. I want a high upside, risky right-handed arm in the rotation. That's what I want.
not after their former closer. They sent him packing the next day. There's not a chance they're touching that.
I don't. It's a touchy subject, but yeah, I don't know that those are the same thing. One,
So-
you know,
A fun
Very
thing
close.
to end it on is we just talked Blue Jays for a long time, and you mentioned several prospects as well, things you hope for this year. A name not mentioned is somebody that everybody hung their hat on, maybe even into last year, was Nate Pearson. Not in the
Yeah.
conversation right now. Possibly a guy, Thomas Hatch, who was, came over in 2020, whenever 2019 trade, also possibly just depth with Hatch. But I mean, Pearson's one of those former prospects, which is one of the reasons why we talk about assets are prospects. MLB players are how you win leagues and championships and your head-to-head and your rotos and everything else. So Blue Jays have a lot of work to do. I like the Ricky Tiedemann promotion. He would end up playing this year at age 20, possibly 21, depending on when he came up, which would be fun. But I mean, we got a lot.
We probably could see with some injuries, Zuleta as well as another arm that we could see at the major league level, right?
There's a lot of hot news still to come, though, Ty, to hopefully, build out depth charts amongst everybody. But
in the last piece is I really want to see us sign Bellinger. I think he's the right fit. I think he's going to be short-term contract, short-term money. Like, I think he's the perfect scenario. We're not going to sign him long-term. We don't need him long-term, but Toronto's
only going to
spot.
do a 1-year deal wherever he goes. I'm sure it'll be a 1-year deal and it'll be 10 million or more, I think.
Yeah, it's a perfect scenario. Yeah, it's a left-handed bat, can play first, center, right field. Like, it fits everything we need. Let's do it. I do not want to see Nimmo. I might move into Ronnie territory on the GM conversation if they sign Nimmo.
Why would you spend $100 million on him? I don't
Agreed.
understand.
Yeah, go get Kiermaier for $50. Like,
yeah,
like seriously. Yeah, but he can bring back the lineup card that he stole in the playoffs.
2024 season. Let's move Bo to second base and get a real shortstop.
Bo's defensive metrics are way better than people want to give credit to. Like, way better. So, I mean, I'm not here for that conversation because although Bo could get his crap together on 2 hoppers at his chest, he's a pretty good defensive shortstop when you take those stupid mental mistakes
Sure.
I go through it. Go through the data, and you will be impressed by what's underneath.
Ty, you're the guy that always wraps up the podcast, but you're all hot and bothered now. Can you still wrap it up? We don't need to get into the Bo yet. Let's have Ronnie back for another
podcast for another day.
And you guys can dive in.
Get my bullets ready.
Bo knows end of podcast.